Good morning. Good morning. So pleased to be joined by Ranking Member Adam Smith with the House Armed Services Committee. As a former HASC member, always honored to be with him. And also DPCC Co-Chair Veronica Escobar, also an Armed Services member. I'd like to briefly acknowledge the 12-year anniversary of the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals Program, or DACA. We recognize the men and women brought to this country by their parents and have only known the United States as their home. Today, they're doctors, teachers, union workers, and small business owners. And House Democrats will never stop working for them and fighting for them with legal status so they have the peace of mind that they deserve. And we know that President Biden and Vice President Harris share that view as well. This morning, we had a productive caucus meeting. We heard from Ranking Member Smith about the important bipartisan provisions in this year's National Defense Authorization Act that will raise the quality of life for our service members and strengthen our national security. House Democrats want to keep the defense bill bipartisan. We will not support extreme partisan policy writers that have become a hallmark of every House Republican legislative effort. We've beaten back those continued attempts and will continue to do so, from abortion to contraception care, and we will do it again. Let's put our service members and their families over politics and reject the extremism that the other side of the aisle continues to push. Let's pass a clean NDAA to protect our national security and our fundamental freedoms. With that, I'll turn it over to Ranking Member Adam Smith.
Thank you very much, Pete. Appreciate your leadership. And just a couple of quick points about the defense bill. There's two really positive things about it. One, it represents a bipartisan effort to meet the obligations and responsibilities of the legislative body. Every year we work in a bipartisan way in committee. We go through regular order, pass the bill, eventually wind up at a conference committee. And that's been a very good and very important process on oversight on a number of different provisions that are crucial to meeting our national security needs. This Congress does its job and works through those bills in a bipartisan way to produce a good product. We did that again this year. We had a 57-1 vote out of the Armed Services Committee. I worked very closely with Chairman Rogers, who is an excellent partner in this process, to produce what I think is an incredibly important product to meet our national security needs, to make sure that we are taking care of our service members, to make sure that we continue to build on the partnerships and alliances that are so crucial to our national security, and to exercise the oversight to get the most out of taxpayers' dollars. Most specifically, we're focused on the F-35 program, cutting back on the buy, and instead investing in what is necessary to get us the product that we are paying for. And throughout the bill, there are provisions like that. Second, this year's bill is really crucial because of its focus on the quality of life for our service members. Don Bacon and Chrissy Houlihan led a panel to analyze what is most important to make sure that service members' needs are being met. And in this bill, we have a 19.5% pay increase for junior enlisted. This was identified as one of the biggest needs. Because of increases in the cost of housing, it's getting harder and harder for people on the lower end of the pay scale within the military to make it. We address that need. We also address childcare and healthcare and support for spouses and families in the most comprehensive way we've ever done. It's really important that we pass that. Those are the two very positive things. The negative is what came out of the Rules Committee, which is all of these amendments to once again turn this bill into more of a monument to bigotry than to the bipartisan cooperation we need to support the men and women who serve in our military. This amendment process, and the amendments haven't passed yet, but we are deeply worried that they will. Number one, goes after women. By taking away the travel policy, given the restrictive access to reproductive care that so many states have adopted, making sure that women have access to the health care they need is a crucial factor in their decision to join the military and stay in the military. It also, again, targets the trans community by banning health care for both service members and their families. And it aggressively goes after any effort to make sure that our military is truly inclusive. If those amendments pass, this bill will not be one that we can support because it will undermine the ability of people to serve in the military. If we're going to have an effective military, we have to recruit from every population. And historically, discrimination against gay and trans people, discrimination against women, discrimination against people of color has made it more difficult for those members to serve. The military is trying to correct that and make sure that the military is welcoming. And let me be clear, they're doing a better job of that. It is getting better for all of those people that I just mentioned. Republicans want to turn back the clock. And final point, while it is getting better, it's not where it needs to be. When you look at promotion within the military, white men are promoted at a higher pace and a higher percentage than any other category. Every other category lags behind. We need to continue to work to improve that. This bill, as it's currently constructed, will do that and will put us in a position to have a strong defense. The amendments offered will undercut and undermine that and contribute to an atmosphere of bigotry and discrimination that we do not need. So I hope we'll defeat those amendments. If we do, we'll have a good bill. If we don't, it will be a bill that we will have to oppose. And with that, I'm very pleased to yield to Veronica Escobar, who's been a long-serving member of the Armed Services Committee, a vital member, also really important on the quality of life panel issues that I mentioned earlier. I will yield to you. I do have to run to something, so I'll be leaving shortly. But thank you very much, Veronica.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Pete. I want to thank our ranking member, Adam Smith. I want to highlight just a couple things and drill down a little bit more on what the ranking member said. As he mentioned, I had the opportunity and the privilege to serve on the Quality of Life panel. We worked together in a bipartisan manner for 9 months in order to produce not just the report that the panel put forward that offered vital investments and improvements for our active duty service members, for their families, but also it demonstrated that when you focus on the things that matter in a bipartisan way, then we get really good stuff done. And that quality of life report was the foundation for this year's NDAA bill. And we had the full support from Chairman Rogers, full support from Ranking Member Smith to make our quality of life focus the foundation of this year's NDAA. And it was one of the quickest NDAA debates that we had. We got out of there before midnight, which was remarkable, but that was a testament to what happens when we focus on the things that really matter. We were very excited to have that overwhelming support for the NDAA, but what has been profoundly disappointing is to see the attacks on women, the LGBTQ community, and the attacks on diversity in the military. I want to speak specifically to the attacks against women. Right after the Dobbs leak surfaced, I have the privilege of representing Fort Bliss, Texas in El Paso. Right after the leak was made public, my office was flooded with calls from female active duty service members who were terrified about what this meant for them, because Texas is one of the states where there is a total abortion ban. And this is how women in the military truly feel about what Republicans are doing today. Terrified that the rights, their hard-earned rights, will continue to be stripped away. The debate that is going to happen, especially around women's reproductive freedom on the floor on this bill, is important to defeat. That amendment is important to defeat. The debate is going to be important for Americans to listen to. We have to watch what Republicans do, not what they tell us. They frequently say that they respect the rights of women, but when we look at what they are doing, specifically through this bill, to women in the military, wanting to strip women of their reproductive freedom, then that is proof of the vision that they have for all women in America. And we will do everything possible to defeat these awful amendments and to ensure that our bipartisan work product is what ends up going to the Senate. And if these amendments pass, it will be a repudiation, unfortunately, of the really great bipartisan work that we did in committee to focus on the things that matter. And with that, I'll turn it back to our caucus chair.
Thank you, Veronica. Questions? Max?
Earlier this week, we saw the trial of Hunter Biden wrap up. I'm curious your thoughts on that conviction. Some of the Republicans, their arguments that there's a two-tiered system of justice, seemingly repudiated by the president's son being convicted.
They seem wrapped around the axle on their own messaging, but the bottom line is Hunter Biden sat before a jury of his peers. A verdict was rendered, and House Democrats believe in the rule of law, and so we will respect that ruling. I think President Biden's statement on this was very clear from the perspective of a parent who's dealing with someone in their family, and many people around the country have that same feeling. And they've been touched in that way. So I'll let that statement speak for itself.
Will you back Congressman Cuellar despite being indicted on corruption bribery charges?
I've answered that before. I've endorsed Henry Cuellar. He's the Democrat on the ballot in South Texas. That hasn't changed.
The charges. Him and his wife accepting $600,000.
Again, it's similar to the last comment. We have a justice system. We need to let the justice system play out. When the justice system has a ruling like Hunter Biden or like convicted felon Donald Trump, we will respect that ruling. If the justice system yields a verdict and a ruling in that case, we'll respect that as well. In the meantime, he's a member of our caucus and has our support. Nick?
I wanted to ask about Congressman Perry serving on the Intelligence Committee. As a member of the January 6th Committee, your investigation had touched on his efforts to overturn the 2020 election. Should he be serving on the Intelligence Committee, and would you support a floor vote to try to remove him?
I haven't heard of any such effort to remove him from the floor. Look, I think it's incredibly dangerous that someone who the FBI has seized their phones related to that activity is serving in the Intelligence Committee or could serve in the Intelligence Committee and have the highest classification dealing with government documents. We need people on that committee who respect the rule of law. And I'm concerned that some members on the other side, like Scott Perry, don't.
Thanks. Thoughts about Trump coming tomorrow and meeting with Republicans?
This is just another, example of House Republicans bending the knee to Donald Trump. He wants them to impeach Joe Biden. They failed at that. Now they're moving on to Merrick Garland. Censures, impeachments. I mean, that's just how dysfunctional the House Republican Conference is. So it's no stranger that they're asking their leader to come talk to them. They will do whatever he asks them to do. That's been very clear. So I don't think I wouldn't put this in the category of being very surprising. But it's nothing that we're invited to. So we'll let them do what they're going to do. Have anything? What?
Over the weekend, we saw a pro-Palestinian protest where statues were defaced and a park police officer was assaulted. What do you think the appropriate action should be in response to that?
The appropriate action is people should be held accountable for their actions. Every citizen has a right to peacefully protest opinions that their friends, neighbors, and that their government takes, but they cannot trespass, deface, or commit acts of violence against anyone. That is the line. And if somebody crosses the line, they should be held accountable by law enforcement. Back. You.
Thank you.
Hi.
On the NDAA, I know you
this one's for you.
were saying that you really want to make sure that diversity and inclusion is recognized in the military. But to take your hands off of the entire bill if those amendments are not passed it's like protecting a smaller number of people to possibly the detriment of a larger group of people. Have you considered that? Have you considered that the entire military could lose, for example, the 19.5% pay increase over reproductive rights?
Let me make this absolutely clear. There was a very bipartisan effort to craft the NDAA. There was a bipartisan vote to pass the NDAA out of committee. We are deeply committed to making sure that we provide the quality of life investments and support that we worked so hard on. We don't know what the amendments what amendments will make it into the final bill. So we'll have to wait and see how the debate proceeds. We have to wait and see how the votes go and whether the Republicans who helped craft such a great bipartisan bill and the Republicans who stood with us together on focusing on the priorities that impact our services, we have to wait and see whether they will continue to stand with us in a bipartisan way to protect that bill, or whether they will fold and give in to the extremist voices in their party and allow a great bill to become something that many in the Democratic Party on our side in the House can no longer support. So we'll have to wait and see what the final product looks like. But this is truly on House Republicans, especially House Republicans on the Armed Services Committee. I hope they stand with us to protect our great work product and do not dilute that work with poison pills that they know will ultimately make this a very difficult bill to pass.
Because of the work of Veronica and Ranking Member Smith and House Democrats, this bill passed 57-1. I would hope that our colleagues on the other side of the aisle stay true to the contents of that legislation and don't add any poison pill riders that would dilute a bipartisan vote like that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Women's Pride Month, within the context of that month, it's a celebratory time for the LGBTQ community. There are a lot of anti-LGBTQ riders in the NDAA and a lot of the appropriations bills that are passing through committee right now. What's your message to the community who, members who may feel disillusioned with politics, disillusioned with the process, who feel like they're not a part of the process as House Republicans are putting forward policies that kind of exclude them from these important programs?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'll ask Veronica to speak to the defense piece, to the NDAA piece as well, but we've seen this in the House Appropriations Committee. Anti-LGBTQ riders placed onto these bills. This is purely a political effort that House Republicans entertain and support in order to rile up their base. But our answer is this isn't who we are. This isn't who we are as a country, as a Congress, as Americans. We had some of the most inclusive language ever under Speaker Pelosi in the last Congress throughout all of our bills and legislation. The importance of passing the Equality Act, chief among our priorities as well. Those are the types of things we can do if given the responsibility to govern. And I think that's what we're going to ask the American people over the next 150 days, to give us that responsibility to govern again, so we can make sure that our policies truly reflect who we are as a Congress and as a country.
And you and I had a great conversation earlier, but I would say specifically to the NDAA and our bipartisan work there, I think what is really important for all of our colleagues and all of America to understand is that our United States military is stronger when it reflects the beautiful diversity of our nation. When our active duty service members work side by side along with fellow Americans who have been given a shot to defend our nation and who have not been purposefully excluded. There is so much talent in our country. There are so many great members of the United States who want to become members of the U.S. military. But if we allow bigotry, and the ranking member said it perfectly, he calls these amendments a monument to bigotry. If we allow that bigotry to prevail, the message we are sending to, whether it's the LGBTQ community, whether it's to women, whether it's to Black, Latino, Asian Americans, you name it, is you're not wanted here. And Democrats will continue to stand against that bigotry and make sure that we are fighting for space for everyone, because we're better off because of it. The military is better off because of it. We have heard high-ranking generals talk about the need for that diversity and that inclusion and that equity. We're going to keep fighting for that. But as our chairman said, really, it is ultimately in November, it's going to be up to the American people to make sure that they help determine what kind of America they want. And my hope is that the vast majority of Americans are with us to fight for equality and inclusion.
This afternoon, the contempt resolution against Aguilar on the floor. Curious for your reaction to that, but also, what do you make of the Republicans arguing that the transcript isn't enough, that they need the audio tapes to protect the Constitution, if they're citing Article 1 protection?
Well, let's be clear. I mean, nothing is going to be enough for Jim Jordan and his group of extremists on the other side. That's just the reality. Anything that would be given to them would never be enough. This is just a sad state of where we are. Republicans are choosing extremism and contempts and impeachments after their impeachment, efforts failed and hit some roadblocks. Now they're moving to this. This is all just an effort to satisfy the former president, who has asked them to do something, to do anything, to distract from his own legal issues. So it's an unfortunate state where we are. Jamie Raskin reminded us that that these have never been given. Tapes have never been, given in the past from a precedent perspective. Transcripts are always enough. That's what we deal with here is what's in the transcript, what's on the document. That's what they've done here. They've satisfied that requirement. Unlike House Republicans who, and Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro, who were held in contempt of Congress for not answering at all. Meanwhile, Merrick Garland and the DOJ has sent troves of information for them. Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro thumb their nose at a lawful subpoena, and they're going to jail as a result of it. So that's the difference between where we are. Thank you so much.